Hello and welcome to the From My Perspective podcast. And today we're going to cover a wide variety of basketball topics. So that's the NBA and the NCAA. Obviously, the NCAA tournament hasn't lacked this year. It's pretty exciting, and we'll definitely get to that later in the show. But right now, we're going to start it off with Devin Booker's 70-point game against the Boston Celtics. And it was an efficient 70 points. He shot 21 of 40 from the field, so that's 51%. And he didn't do a lot of it from three. He only shot 4 of 11 from beyond the arc, which only adds to the impressiveness of it. He also had 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals. He played 45 minutes because the Suns are clearly tanking as Bledsoe, Knight, and Chandler did not play. And they ultimately did end up losing, putting a damper on the night. Well, they didn't put a damper on the night because they still celebrated like they won, which prompted Jay Crowder to say something like, "I've never seen so many people happy after an L," which I do feel Jay Crowder. They did lose 130 to 120, but they didn't let that spoil the night, apparently. Devin Booker did score 70 points, and he did best Michael Jordan's career high of 69 points. And that's not to say he's going to be as good as or better than Michael Jordan. I'm just saying that is something to think on. He just surpassed a lot of people's best player of all time, my second best player of all time. So that's just something to think about. Devin Booker, who was taken a little low for my liking during the draft, he did go 13th overall to the Phoenix Suns. And the only reason I think he went so low is because he played for such a loaded Kentucky team that he didn't even start on. They went 38-1. Obviously, everyone remembers them getting stunned by Wisconsin, who went on to lose in the national championship. But that was a pretty tough Wisconsin team. They remember that Kentucky team had players like Aaron Harris, Karl Anthony Towns, Devin Booker, Willie Cauley-Stein, Trey Lyles, Dakari Johnson, Tyler Ulis, Marcus Lee, Dominique Hawkins, Derek Willis, and the team was just so loaded. Alex, I can never remember how to pronounce his last name. I think it was Poitras. I think that's how you pronounced it. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but that's how loaded this team was. And it's easy for talented players to fall to the background. They had Harris twins, Andrew Harrison. They also had him. So it's easy on this roster where the most points average was 11, and you had players like Karl Anthony Towns who averaged 10. That's just how good this team was. This team was so loaded with talent top to bottom that if it was just Devin Booker, he could have went as early as the top 10, top 7 in that draft. So it's hard to say where he would have went if he didn't go to Kentucky. And Phoenix got a steal, it looks like. And hopefully Phoenix won't hinder his growth like they did Isaiah Thomas and Goran Dragic. So, segueing into the next topic of making history, Russell Westbrook. Has he been stat padding him in the Oklahoma City Thunder? According to a Reddit page that's gone very popular and has some facts, I fact-checked a lot of it to make sure that Oklahoma City and Russell Westbrook have been engineering triple-doubles. And for those who don't believe it, here are the facts. Russell Westbrook is leading the lead in uncontested rebounds per game. Yes, it is a stat. At 7.9 rebounds per game, uncontested. So that clearly means the big men are boxing out and moving out the way so that Westbrook can get the rebound. That is 8 rebounds per game. 8, where he has no contest. He's getting the rebound. It's like a jump shot that just bounces, rolls, and he just gets it. Well, obviously not like that, but that's just an example of what it could be. They box out, he goes and gets the rebound, he pushes the tempo. And the stat that clearly shows to back it up is that Russell Westbrook has contested a grand total of 252 shots this season. That's good for 7th best on his own team. And that's way in the bottom section of the NBA. So according to the stats, and you'll see it if you watch it, I have looked at some of his highlights, and you can see during the rebounds that Westbrook will hang back, allowing players to shoot, and then the big men clear out and clear out the paint and let him rebound to accumulate the stats necessary to get the triple-double, to average a triple-double for the season and try to best Oscar Robinson. Now, this could hurt Westbrook's MVP chances. He wasn't my MVP to start with. I have LeBron 1, Harden 2, Kawhi 3, Westbrook 4. And it's not because I don't like Westbrook. He's just not an MVP candidate, in my opinion. Remember, it's the most valuable player, and valuable players add wins, not the most impressive season award. And if you're not winning, then you're not that valuable. The Thunder can lose without Westbrook. As of right now, the Thunder are sitting at 6th in the Western Conference that has been down this year. The Denver Nuggets and the Dallas Mavericks are in the hunt for a playoff spot. The Portland Trail Blazers. The Pelicans still have a shot at making the playoffs. So you can't keep giving me the argument that, the West is so much harder than the East. The West this, the West that. The West is just so difficult, when in the East, they have tough matchups coming up. The Heat are on fire, and they're 8th. So obviously because they started so bad, but how many teams really want to face Miami right now? Boston is looking like a top team. The Wizards, the Raptors with Serge Ibaka. I don't really care much for the Bucks or the Hawks, but the Pacers, I don't really care much for them either. But the East, just like the West, are top heavy. But you got the Cavs, Celtics, Wizards, and Raptors in the East. And in the West, all you really have is Golden State and San Antonio. As I've always said, the Rockets are not beating San Antonio, and the Rockets are not beating the Warriors. The Jazz aren't going to beat the Warriors or the Spurs. The Clippers will be lucky to get to the second round this year. And so it's a 2-team race, when in the East you have 4. So this year, the East is better than the West. And hopefully that'll put all the talks to getting rid of the East versus West playoff series and just mixing the teams up. I never was a fan of that idea, and I'm glad it never came to fruition, because that would just ruin the NBA playoffs for me. I would watch it, but I wouldn't enjoy it. But back to topic, Russell Westbrook is not my MVP this year, and he won't be, because he hasn't accumulated enough wins to become the MVP. They're 6th in the West, as I said earlier, and that's not good enough to win MVP. Switching over to the NCAA, and the hottest topic in sports right now, obviously, would be Lavar Ball. And is he hurting his son? I really didn't want to talk about it, but I am. And so, is he hurting his son? And the answer is yes. And simply because Lavar has already written in a check his son couldn't cash. And that was guaranteeing that the UCLA Bruins would win the national championship. He was saying it all year long. And they couldn't even make the Elite Eight. UCLA fell to Kentucky in the Sweet 16, where Lonzo was just outplayed by De'Aaron Fox, who dropped 39 points. And Malik Monk also, who had 21 points. We'll speak more on Malik Monk later in this show. And I didn't expect UCLA to win, nor did I have them winning, because Kentucky was just a better team overall. And it showed. Kentucky was just so much better than UCLA, and it was just asinine for anyone to think UCLA would beat Kentucky. But back to LeVar, and he's using the Donald Trump technique, and I know that's going to ruffle a lot of feathers, but he is just saying the most asinine statement you can think of that you don't even believe, ruffle some feathers, garner attention, and it'll end up good for you. Obviously, Donald Trump is the president of the United States, the most powerful position in the world, using this method, and LeVar Ball is now the most popular person in sports using this technique. LeVar knows he's not better than MJ. He knows he can't beat MJ one-on-one. And he knows he would lose to Charles Barkley one-on-one. That's why he ducked and dodged the game, played it off. Charles Barkley don't want to play no one-on-one. He needs to stay behind the desk in TNT and eat donuts. That was the biggest cop-out I've ever heard. And I don't believe that he's doing this for his sons. His sons were garnering national attention before we even knew who LeVar Ball was. And my theory on it is LeVar wants a position as an analyst in sports. He wants to land a spot on the network. He wants to be the center of the show. He wants to be a color commentator. And the guy is made for TV. I mean, just listen to him and Stephen A. Smith go back and forth on ESPN's First Take.
How's he going to beat me? Why are you saying stuff like this? Why are you doing this? Why are you? Is this another marketing tool of yours?
Check this out.
What?
Everybody used to say who's the best, Michael Jordan or
Who did you
LeBron.
think was the best?
They
Who did
said,
you think
who's
was the best?
Kobe or LeBron?
Who did you think was the best?
Guess what the story is now? Who's better, LeVar or Michael
Ain't
Jordan?
nobody think about no damn LeVar.
Yes, they are. Look at you. Who we talking
Nobody
about?
think about no LeVar.
And he's doing all this for himself. He's using Lonzo's hype to build himself. And I'm not going to say it's not fair. It's a smart thing to do. He obviously is a smart man. He's advertising his brand. He's been on the show. He's been on all the TV shows: Sports Nation, The Herd, First Take, I think he was on Undisputed too, wearing the big baller brand, the triple Bs, and he keeps making the same statements that don't make any sense. You really think Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, or anyone would pay $1 billion for big baller brand? You think those companies would literally spend $1 billion to sign you and your three boys? And first of all, that would automatically eliminate LiAngelo and LaMelo from playing in the NCAA because, as you said, they'll sign your three boys for $1 billion. So that obviously means they will not be able to play at UCLA or in high school anymore. So it'll take at least 4 years for that to happen. And even if Lonzo does become a star, doesn't guarantee the other two will become stars. And no company with a competent CEO would pay $1 billion for a brand that's kind of popular. Not that popular. You've been all over TV. Yeah, I don't see a lot of people wearing it. Not trying to say it won't work. Not to say that it's not good looking clothes. I mean, I would buy it probably if it wasn't so expensive. And that's another thing. It's more expensive than Nike, and he's saying that it's big ballers. that got me to laugh, and it's great advertising. I'm sure his sales have gone up. I'm sure he's living a life right now. Obviously, he hopes to land a spot on TV, which would only add to his income. And he's been doing all of this while saying his famous phrase that it's 3 B's up here to cost you one to get it, and that won't happen. You might get a couple million, and they'll take about 51% of the company. If you don't take it, then they'll just let it go. Nike, Adidas, Under Armour would sign Lonzo to the regular deal that they'll sign everyone else to, and then they'll move on with life. And so that's just my theory on Lavar Ball. He's doing this for himself, and he's trying to be on the national stage along with his kids. Moving over to the Final Four, which is finally set, and the games will be on April 1st in Glendale, Arizona, with the South Carolina Gamecocks will go on to face the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And at number 3, we have the next game, we have Oregon, the number 3 Oregon Ducks, against the number 1 North Carolina Tar Heels. We're going to go ahead and start with the South Carolina versus Gonzaga game. The Gamecocks are in the midst of a Cinderella run after stunning the favorite to win it, Duke, followed by a dominant performance over Baylor, and then surviving a tough Florida team. So, for all those saying this is a fluke, South Carolina is battle-tested, and it's proven they belong here in this Final Four, but they'll be facing an always consistently good Gonzaga team who's in their first Final Four game after defeating the West Virginia, the best defense in the NCAA. I don't care what the numbers say. Press Virginia is what their nickname, because their press is just so stifling, and I enjoy watching West Virginia games. And so, yeah, they've overcome the best defense in the tournament. And no one wants to face the West Virginia. And Gonzaga battled them. It was a back-and-forth game, and they won. And then eventually they put Xavier's Cinderella run to an end. And in this game, despite South Carolina looking so good, I'm going to go with Gonzaga just because their size. And they've been this deep in the tournament before. They've been there. They've done that. Well, they haven't been to the Final Four, but they've made deep runs before. They've been to the Elite Eight. They've done this. They've been here before. This isn't new to them. And so that's why I go with Gonzaga, just because they haven't been beat up on either like South Carolina. You play Duke. You play Baylor. Those are physical teams, and they'll take a toll on you. And it's not like a football toll, but it's a toll that it takes playing those teams back-to-back every other day. And then you get the week off, and then you play another Florida. You play a Florida team. So Duke, Baylor, Florida, back-to-back. They may just be out of gas by the time they get to Gonzaga. And that's why I'm going with Gonzaga. Now for the second matchup, we have Oregon versus North Carolina. Oregon has reached their first Final Four since winning it all in 1939 after beating the best team in the tournament, Kansas, and beating a tough Michigan team in the game prior. But I do think their run will end when they face the second best team in the tournament. I'm talking about in terms of complete. Kansas obviously had Frank Mason. They had Devontae Graham, Gerald Vick, Josh Jackson, Lucas. They just had an overall complete team with Bill Self coaching. Now you run into a North Carolina team that is basically the same team, just bigger. And Oregon dodged a bullet with Kansas, if we're all being honest with ourselves. They couldn't buy a bucket, and Oregon couldn't miss. Just look at the sequence going into halftime. Off the glass, the in and out, but wait, it went in. Those shots like that, if those aren't falling, they wouldn't have beat Kansas, and they're not going to beat North Carolina doing that. North Carolina also just finished a classic game with Kentucky, with Luke May hitting the game winner after, Malik Monk's ridiculous shot between two defenders. It was almost like last year, just in reverse, where Marcus Page tied it up, and then, this just reminded me of so much memories, where Villanova went back down court, Arcidiacono over to Hart for the win, and it just stunned North Carolina. This time, North Carolina got the better end of the deal, so to speak, and North Carolina is my pick to win the championship. In my closer thought bracket, I also did get the entire South region correct. That is the first time for me, and I would like to see who else has done that, because I got an entire region right. I got the entire South region correct. I did not miss not one game. Not one game was wrong, and it's pretty cool if you ask me. I thought I thought it was pretty cool. I didn't get it. I got an entire region correct. And so that leads me to my national championship between North Carolina and Gonzaga. I do think North Carolina will run away from Oregon late in the game, kind of like Oregon did to Kansas late in the game. And yeah, my national championship, Gonzaga versus North Carolina, and this would just be North Carolina all the way. North Carolina would just dominate Gonzaga. Their ability to just outshoot North Carolina. They're a big team. They're a physical team. They play defense. They're two complete teams, but North Carolina just has the more talent with Justin Jackson, and just overall has more talent and players that'll step up, make big-time plays. As you can see, Luke May, I believe he had 17 points versus Kentucky. And so North Carolina will win the national championship. And moving back over to the NBA, like I said, it's a lot of basketball today. We're going to talk some draft now. Malik Monk has shot up my board, as he should with everybody else. And right now, here's how my top 5 draft picks go. Number 1, Boston Celtics no-brainer, Markelle Fultz. He's the best player in the draft and a surefire franchise player. And for those who are waiting, my 2017 greatest draft class of all time update will be coming out soon. I'm still working. I'm waiting for the season to be over so I can get all the stats and stuff together and just put out a great video. Number 2, we have Los Angeles Lakers. And this is if they keep their pick, because we all know the lottery, if it's outside the top 3, it goes to Philadelphia. And I have them taking point guard Lonzo Ball. And to be honest, I think D'Angelo Russell is overrated. He's not a franchise player. And if the Lakers could find a trade partner for him to bring in like a true shooting guard or a legit center, I'd look long and hard into it. And if they don't find a good enough offer, I say move him to the 2, where he actually played pretty good this year at the 2. But you still have Jordan Clarkson there. You obviously did move Lou Williams to make space for that if they have to. And overall, it'd be interesting to see how the Lakers do this. Number 3, we have the Phoenix Suns. I'd have Monk going here if they didn't already have a ton of guards and Devin Booker emerging as a superstar. So I'm taking Jason Tatum at the small forward out of Duke. And at number 4, I have the Orlando Magic taking Malik Monk. Monk is an elite player, and who I think will be a superstar in the NBA just because his ability to score any way, however way, and from anywhere. He is a clutch player, as you've seen in the NCAA tournament. You've seen throughout the season. He is the one player that has shown up every time it's counted and never failed. At number 5, I have the Sacramento Kings taking Josh Jackson at the small forward position. And that's how my top 5 goes right now. And just to elaborate more on the video will be coming soon, and I'm thinking about breaking it down into 3 or 4 tiers. Number 1 being the surefire superstars and franchise players, or surefire stars / franchise players. You know, obviously, you're not going to have a lot of, franchise players come out of here. The second tier, you have a lot of good players, could make a couple all-star appearances, could fall to the, just overall players. In the third tier being solid players, solid role players, like solid starters, and solid, role players in the NBA. I've been thinking about moving the role players to like a 4th tier, but yeah, I'm still putting together still brainstorming ideas on how to make the video and make it all correlate and make sense. So, quick recap for the day. Russell Westbrook stat padding. Obviously, it's true. You don't get 8 uncontested rebounds just because it doesn't just happen every night. You don't not contest 252 shots. And he's a guard. Russell Westbrook's a guard. You have like Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Isaiah Thomas, Devin Booker now. you have guys that take a lot of Klay Thompson. You have guys that take a lot of shots. DeMar DeRozan. You have Deion Waiters now hiking up a lot of shots. Kemba Walker. Every team has a guard that will take a lot of shots, and you're only contested 252? Bottom tier of the league, 7th on your own team? That's camping out for rebounds as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of people are going to have something to say about it. Russell Westbrook wasn't my MVP anyway, but he is a great player. I do like Russell Westbrook. I do appreciate what he's doing. And if he does make history, he makes history, you know. So I'm not trying to belittle that. But, you know, the facts don't lie. The numbers don't lie. Lavar Ball, I do think he's doing this for himself. Gonzaga, North Carolina National Championship. I do have North Carolina winning it. And the draft, obviously, Malik Monk is shooting up my draft board. He should be shooting up all GM's draft boards, because if you can get him at a 3 or below, I definitely take him. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Catch you next time. I'm out.